Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal, where after a week-long hiatus, I'm joined by James Benge of CBS for another episode of Inside Arsenal Extra Time. How are you getting on, mate? You good?
Release the tapes, Charles. People want to know what happened to the show that never was. Should we tell them what happened?
I did tell everyone what happened the next morning when I hastily recorded a 10-minute show before I went to Chessington at about 6 in the morning. And I did tell everyone that we had recorded everything. It had been uploaded, and then Arsenal went and sold Aaron Ramsdale basically about an hour after we'd finished and just before it went out. And it was all our chat was based around the goalkeeper situation and what they might and might not do. And then by the time it was going to be published, it was all so old news that we just simply couldn't release it. So, yeah, I say a week-long hiatus. We did sit down and record a good 50-minute show last week that has will never see the light of day, unfortunately.
I mean, I think it really speaks to sort of covering any club, any organisation in this transfer window, just how absolutely sort of mad it is that you basically can't do these sorts of big shows that we do that are a bit more discursive, that take time to then get uploaded in a deadline day thing. Because I'm sure we also within that spoke about, what do we think of Joan Garcia and release clauses and all that, and then you just sort of get this Neto thing. On deadline day,
we spoke about that, about Garcia and how we thought it was still probably going to be difficult for them to actually get it done because of what Espanyol were going to hold out for, and the fact Espanyol were going to be in such a strong position. And it didn't surprise me that that's what they ended up having to do. In a way, it was no surprise at all.
And then you have like sort of Reece Nelson on deadline day, where as you know, we sort of know quite well connected into Reece Nelson's camp, in spite of what the people that say you get a story wrong might want to think. And I was sort of being told at 4 o'clock, he's staying. He's really disappointed that he won't. He knows he won't get the football to develop. And then what was it? 6 o'clock. It was like, no, he's going to Ipswich. And then I went out for dinner and sort of came back and was like, no, he's going to Fulham now. You go, absolute chaos. And you would have it any other way. It's got to be a better way of doing this than deadline day.
Yeah, it is mad. And that, to be fair, we recorded that show because I was pre-recording it for the morning, weren't it? It was going to go out in the morning. Yeah. And I was very aware that something like that might happen. So I think we recorded it about 7 o'clock at night. We waited as late as we possibly could to record it, hoping that nothing would happen. But like you said, in that late on in the window, things can change very, very quickly. And indeed they did. So we're going to talk about that in the first part of today's show. We're going to sit down and sort of debate the squad and how we think Arsenal have done in the window, and this whole conversation about whether they've gambled on the amount of players in their squad. Have they left themselves too light? So we're going to give our thoughts on that. We've got plenty of other things to discuss. Loads of you, as usual, thank you very much, have got in touch and asked us some of your questions that we will debate during the second half of the show as well. So plenty to discuss. And we may as well, as we're talking about it already, start with what happened on deadline day, who came in, who came out, what it means for the squad. And obviously the big news was Raheem Sterling did sign for Arsenal right at the end of the window. Arsenal getting him in from Chelsea on loan for the season. Absolutely no loan, no obligations, no payment to Chelsea, covering a fraction of his wages. Well, I say fraction, it's still a fair chunk of money, about 100 grand a week, but still, under half of his wages. I think it's a good deal. At the end of the day, I don't think you can really complain about it. Obviously, Sterling now has to perform, but on the face of it, I think it's a pretty good deal for Arsenal right at the end of the window, and it's certainly added to their attacking strength. Agree? Disagree?
Fully agree. I think we can sort of, like, when we take a step back and discuss the window as a whole, we might have sort of differing views, maybe differing views from our viewers and listeners as well about the window as a whole. But I think if you kind of get to the Monday of the final week of the window and the options have sort of really gone, I think getting a player that last season had 8 goals, 4 assists in a really bad Chelsea team and was getting good opportunities, great XG, XA, kind of on the same level as Martinelli, getting them for a song, getting them for what is a pretty kind of mid-tier wage within your own setup, whilst Chelsea pay you £10 million a year, or pay Raheem Sterling £10 million a year to pay for you. But it's a really great deal. It's really great exploiting of a market inefficiency. And I liked how Arsenal played those last few hours as well. I mean, it was very clear when you were asking the question throughout the day that Arsenal were not giving much away, that Arsenal didn't want to sort of talk about a done deal, a deal that they were really pushing for, going up to the highest levels of the club. They didn't want to let anything out of the bag until Chelsea just ran out of options, and Chelsea effectively were left with a choice of keep Raheem Sterling or clear a bit of his wages and don't, Enzo Maresca doesn't have to deal with quite as many questions on a weekly basis about Sterling. So in this specific thing in the last few days, fantastic by Eddie.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think the thing with Sterling as well, he's got a lot riding on this season, which, makes me think he's going to come in. He's going to have to perform. He's got to fight his way into the side, which is going to be difficult. But, he's not going to go back to Chelsea. That's just not going to happen at the end of next season. So he needs to have a good year so that he can either secure himself a permanent move to Arsenal, which, wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility, although maybe doubtful. But then, get himself a good move elsewhere anyway, even if it's not Arsenal. So he needs to perform this season. He needs to play well. He needs to show he can still cut it at the top level. So you're basically getting a player who you would think is going to be very hungry to do well for 100 grand a week, like you said, which is a very kind of mid wage for Arsenal. So it's a decent option. Like you said, at the start of the window, it's probably not one that either of us would have sort of predicted that Arsenal would need to do, because we probably think they would have gone elsewhere and got a more permanent solution to what they want to do in terms of the attack. But when you're running out of time, when you haven't got being able to secure the sort of players that maybe you started the window wanting to secure, like a Nico Williams, for example, someone like that, then, getting Raheem Sterling right at the death for very, very little money, you can't really complain. And it definitely strengthens Arsenal position now. Imagine, look, we'll look at the squad. I did bring it up here. If you look at this squad now, you take sort of Raheem Sterling out of that, and they're looking very, very light in attack. So it was a very important late move for them as well. So when you look at that squad and you look at the numbers, obviously stacked in defence, got fantastic options when it comes to the defence. Goalkeeper, I think they're weaker than they started the window, but I think that was always going to be the case because it was just unsustainable to keep Raya and Ramsdale. So something was going to happen. They didn't manage to get the third choice keeper in that they were hoping to get as well. So you're going to rely on a very young Tommy Setford, you would expect throughout the season as your number 3. So I think they're weaker there. Midfield, numbers-wise, they're certainly shorter. When you take Fabio Vieira, you take Emil Smith-Rowe out of there. Obviously, El Nenny's gone as well. You've added Marino. And then forwards-wise, Eddie's gone, Reece has gone, and you've brought in Raheem. So when you look at that squad now at the end of the window, have Arsenal gambled a little bit? Has Edu gambled a little bit when it comes to squad building for Mikel Arteta?
Not particularly. I think the numbers may be smaller, but the hope and the expectation and the demand on Mikel Arteta will be that almost everyone in that squad, maybe set aside Kivior, maybe only Kivior, gets used significantly as this season rolls on. Fun thing about Neto that he can't play EFL Cup. That seems a bit of a waste, but these are micro issues. I think on big picture stuff, that's a squad where the numbers may be lesser than they are last season, but I don't kind of get the feeling that Mikel Arteta will just be like, who won't Smith Rowe, Jorginho, or maybe even someone like Tomiyasu when he's fit. I think almost every player there, I would say, I can see the games where Arteta goes, yep, you're in the 11. Come on, mate. And in many ways, that means their depth is stronger than just having Smith Rowe, Vieira, Nelson, and Nketiah, players that we kind of discovered over the course of last season. Arteta wasn't fancying anymore. The worry will be that he cools enough on some of these players that they functionally aren't in the first team. But question to you would be, Kivior aside and Tierney obviously as well, is there anyone there that you think Arteta's sort of going to manage in the same way as Smith Rowe, where he doesn't use them often enough?
No. I'm surprised at the lack of minutes Jorginho's had so far at the start of this season, but he will get minutes, no doubt about it, for me. So no, I don't think there's anyone there who's going to get the Smith Rowe Vieira stroke Eddie treatment over the second half of last season, or the Nelson treatment. They're all going to, as you said, I think they're going to get significant minutes. I mean, there's obviously no Ethan Nwaneri on that list as well, because this is the senior players, and they still obviously got enlisted in the 21s. But I think you certainly add his name to that squad for this season. Potentially, you've got Miles as well, who could come in for some games. So there's a couple of youngsters who you could add to that squad just to bolster out the numbers. But no, I agree. It's a slimmed out squad. I think they have taken a little bit of a gamble. I think it's a really good move, and I've spoken about this before, obviously to you. I think because it happened a while ago. Sorry, I'm just looking at the rain outside my window, and it's the first school run of the year. It's the first school run of the year. My missus has gone to pick up the kids right now, and it is absolutely tipping it down. It's like welcome back to the summer for the kids at school. And I've totally forgotten what I was talking about now. Before that as well.
I think you were going to leaning towards talking about how you think the midfield.
Yeah, Fabio Vieira. Like I do wonder if maybe he should have been kept, but I think in terms of him and his development and getting minutes, it's a fantastic loan, and it was probably well needed. I just worry about Martin Odegaard getting injured. Like as soon as he went down at the weekend against Brighton, immediately I'm just thinking, oh my God, if this is bad, what on earth are Arsenal going to do here? There's going to have to be a significant rejig, and probably involving Kai Havertz dropping into midfield or something like that, which changes that entire makeup of the team. There's just no one there that I view as can come in. I think everyone's got cover in that squad now. I think when you look at it, if Saka gets injured, Sterling plays. If Martinelli gets injured, Trossard plays. If Havertz is out, Jesus plays, or then you can flip between Trossard and players like that who can play in midfield. I think you go through every member of that squad, there's someone who you immediately think they can play there. They can play there. I don't really see it with Odegaard unless it involves a massive retinkering of who's playing in what position. And that's my big fear, is that I think that's a little bit of a gamble, that you basically have to rely on Martin Odegaard not getting injured throughout a course of a season again, which basically managed to do last season. So that's my main worry when I look at the squad. I'm not overly bothered about the lack of strikers. I do think maybe they're one short in attack. The fact you've let Eddie go and you've not gone out and got another kind of player in his mould, but I think there's enough to cope, and I think Sterling does help with that as well. But yeah, it's the Odegaard issue for me. I just think it's a big sort of dark cloud hanging over that squad, and every time he's gonna get a kick, which will be a lot, I'm going to be concerned about it.
I mean, like you say, Havertz is probably the way you would restructure this, and it maybe would end up looking more 4-2-3-1, is you bring Havertz into that role, you kind of trust that Jesus and Trossard can give you centre forward minutes, and you just try and white knuckle it. But realistically, if you could have a backup for him, but if Martin Odegaard goes down for 3 months, then your title challenge is probably over. And the same with Saliba, and the same with Saka. And the reality of winning a Premier League title is you just have to get lucky on the injury front. City have frankly done that. They're probably the one team you would be like, well, they can fade almost any player. I would say if Haaland gets injured for them this season for even 3 weeks, they're in big trouble. But we saw what happened with Liverpool, didn't we? The seasons where you do win the title, especially if you're the non-City team, you just need every single break to go your way. And I think maybe if things go really right for Vieira in Portugal, he comes back next season and he is a real Odegaard backup, a player that you can rest him with. But I think I just couldn't perceive a Premier League game where Mikel Arteta would start Fabio Vieira over Martin Odegaard, at least until, game 36, when the league is done and dusted.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the addition of Sterling, there's a question here. It says, hi, Charles and James. What should we read into the training session Arsenal published focusing on Raheem, considering that most of his attacking came down the wide right position opposed to the wide left? I mean, when you look at Sterling and what his best positions is, and the fact he's come into Arsenal, are you looking at him as the Saka replacement, or are you looking at him as a potential option to challenge Martinelli and Trossard over on the left-hand side as well?
I would certainly think immediately on the left, because I'm intrigued by the idea of what Martinelli can give you down the right flank, playing kind of on, pushing to the byline, which I think we maybe don't see as much as we used to on that left-hand side. But the honest answer is I don't really know. I think Sterling probably would have played more right-winger minutes at Chelsea last season if Cole Palmer hadn't become one of the best players in the Premier League. part of the appeal is the versatility, isn't it? And that almost kind of whatever side he plays on, he's going to be operating more as a sort of inside forward. I think if he's on the left flank, then my question would be who sort of, in that lane of 5, he's probably going to be the one that comes in field and attacks the box. What does that say about who needs to play left 8, who needs to play left back as well? Is that something Calafiori could do, bombing to the byline? The honest answer is I don't know. I think in terms of, Arsenal's training video and him being on the right, I haven't watched the video, but I'm going to say, is that not because just Saka wasn't in the sessions and Martinelli is not on international break?
He was pretty much the whole video is all him on the right-hand side getting in. I noticed it as well and thought it was slightly interesting, but then it was basically 4 or 5 senior players with just a bunch of kids because everyone's away. Yeah. So you can't read too much into it, I have to say. But I think we'll see him. I think we'll see him play in a multitude of positions, to be honest, while he's here. But he certainly does add that right-sided cover that I think they did need it. I agree. I think Martinelli on the right-hand side is a good thing. It kind of looks like something needs to happen just to potentially just not wake Martinelli out. It sounds a little bit too harsh, but just for something to happen to spark him into life a little bit. And maybe it is just something as simple as moving him to the other flank at times. I mean, he looked very good at the end of last season when he played on the right-hand side. He played really, really well. And, he's definitely struggling a little bit. He's searching for form, for confidence, whatever it is. And maybe something as simple as that, playing him on the right-hand side, playing him as a striker against Bolton in the Cup, something that could just spark him into life a little bit rather than, something needs to happen, I think, anyway. But yeah, we're interested on Raheem Sterling. I thought it was quite good that Edu came out in that interview straight afterwards and basically said, look, this isn't something we were going to do. It's not a planned thing. It was an opportunity. And I thought it was very forthright, very honest of him. But it could work out to be an excellent piece of business. On left-sided attackers, the Leandro Trossard stuff came out this week, which just kind of made me laugh. I mean, you've got a lot more contacts in Saudi football than I do. What was your sort of take and understanding on this and the timing of it for an offer like this to arrive after the window over here is shut? So basically giving Arsenal no time to even source a replacement if they were even interested in doing a deal. It just sounded so mad that, well, I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's quite a hard one to read because, look, we've covered this sport long enough to know that formal offers and even informal offers, which I think the Trossard one was more of the latter, aren't made until a club really gets a sense that there would be interest from the player in making the move, because it's incredibly embarrassing to agree a fee for a player and then him to go, what? I don't want to play for you. Having said that, sort of digging around on this, while I do, believe that there may well have been sort of conversations from Al Ittihad that sort of asked whether Trossard might one day be interested in a move to the Saudi Pro League and perhaps laid out the appeal of a move to the Saudi Pro League. I don't particularly think that, that anyone was really expecting this offer, including Trossard, to come on the final days of the window. And there was no real push from Trossard to get the deal done. It's worth saying the option to buy would have meant there were conversations about salary. And from what I understand, it would have been a huge upswing on what he would have earned at Arsenal. I think you're looking at somewhere in the region of 15 to 20 million euros a year, which is UK, you'd need to earn 500, 600 grand a week. So you're talking a phenomenal salary increase, which I suspect is kind of why sometimes these Saudi clubs just think, well, we'll convince them because, we've sort of said this is what you might be able to earn. And the agents or people close to the players often, and I'm talking in generalities here, not specifically with Trossard, they go, oh, wow, that's very interesting. Happy to talk further on this. But yeah, I think to an extent, the final few days of the Pro League window was just a sort of bit of a mad rush to see what stars they could get, what stars they thought were on the market. I mean, as we talk now, I just reported on some fairly mad figures that Al Nassr were prepared to pay Kovacic £1 million a week. I think at this stage of the window, it's more firing a bit of money at potential clubs and seeing that the Trossard situation might open up and just seeing what happens. I think it was much more exploratory than those people that might think, oh, Trossard must be keen to go. I think it was more of an exploratory move.
Yeah. I was told he was absolutely, more than happy at Arsenal and had no real interest in it. But like you said, I think when it comes to the Saudi money and all these talks that will go on behind the scenes, it must be very, very hard for any player just to brush it away. That when you're getting that sort of money, it's very hard to close those talks down altogether. I can imagine all the clubs in Saudi will always think, you know what, he might not be too keen on it, but there's always a chance because of that money. It's so hard, I imagine, to turn down that sort of thing, that sort of cash. But for Arsenal, it made absolutely no sense. It was obviously a non-starter from the off. I mean, next summer maybe, but for now, after the window's shut, I mean, it's just an absolute. It was just never ever going to happen.
Bear in mind that Trossard as well didn't come into sort of huge football salaries until he moved to Arsenal. I'm sure he was on good money at Brighton, but you know what I mean. And this money is change your life. You know, your kids don't ever need to work again. Your grandkids don't ever need to work again, as opposed to coming out of it in a very healthy financial position. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't think that there is. I don't think there's a huge amount of sort of love between the Saudi Pro League and PIF clubs and Arsenal. And I don't necessarily think that like PIF were super enamored with the sort of opportunities that might have been available at Arsenal. So when people start saying in 9 months' time, sell Gabby Jesus to the Pro League, just think to yourself, do the Saudi Pro League want a player with a significant injury track record? Anyway.
Well, we shall see. For now, the window's shut anyway, so thank the Lord for that. Ballon d'Or, just quickly on this one. Obviously, Arsenal got 4 nominees in the men's Ballon d'Or. Only Man City have got more, which again shows how the good things that are happening at
Madrid
Arsenal
as well.
Right now. Sorry? Oh, sorry.
Real Madrid as well.
I meant Madrid, not Man City. Man City have got 4 as well. So it's Arsenal and City on 4, then Madrid on 7. Obviously, none of these 4 are going to win it, but it's good the fact that they've even been nominated. Shows how well the team is doing. Who is it? Who wins it for you? Just quickly, we're going to move on from this. But I've had my day this morning.
Yeah, I saw that and I agree. Rodri, best player in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think he should be nailed on to win it. Personally,
normally we get the sort of the breakdown, don't we? And who's finished 8th, 9th. Which of those 4 do you think will be the highest ranked
for Arsenal?
Yeah.
Actually, I had an interesting question. I don't think I brought it up. I saw it. Let me just quickly see if I can find it here while I'm scrolling. This is not going to make good TV.
I can chat over while you scroll, and I'll give you my take on it, unless it's going to contradict the question. But like,
it's right. I found it.
Yeah,
so it says with the nominees announced, this is a good time to bring up something I've been thinking about. Which of our players is closest to winning the Ballon d'Or? Imagine we've just won the league and the Champions League double. I know, but play along. I think if the voting wasn't biased towards attacking players, Saliba right now is the closest. But given the defender hasn't won it since Cannavaro, it's probably Martin. Thoughts? So yeah, I mean, obviously, if Arsenal went on to win the Champions League and Premier League double, one of those players would have such a significant impact in it that you could probably predict who would be the highest up the voting. But right now, as it stands, out of these 4, like you said, who would be highest up? I think Saliba's probably got the best shout. Yeah, I think Saliba's the best centre back. I think he's the best player in his position in the world. So, and as much as I love Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard, I'm not sure that you can argue that almost for definite. But for me, I would die on the hill now arguing that William Saliba is the best centre back in the world, and I don't think I'd be able to do that for the other 3. So I'd probably go with him.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. And I also think if you think, how do Arsenal end up winning the Premier League and Champions League, let's say this season, it probably is off the back of like a brilliant defence. And then maybe, given how excellent Saliba would be in that brilliant defence, I think maybe he would win it. I think because I think especially if Rodri wins it this year, you do sort of hear that sort of murmuring around the sort of football community. Maybe it's only the Anglophone world where it's like, oh, it would be quite nice for a defender or even a defensive-minded player like Rodri. I know he's more than a DM, but you know what I mean. It would be nice for one of them to win it. And so, yeah, I think if Arsenal won the Premier League and Champions League, I would go for Saliba, assuming none of those guys had, a mad season.
Messi won it last year, didn't he?
Yeah, off the back of the World Cup.
Did Rodri come second?
Oh,
On the back
again,
of City winning the treble and him scoring the winner in the Champions League final.
It was Haaland was second, but maybe he came third. Again, I will keep.
Haaland
Haaland had scored all those
scored
goals,
like 75 million goals, but still,
Rodri was fifth. He wasn't even third among City.
And that's when they won the treble, and he scored the winner in the Champions League final, and they still come fifth. I don't know how he's not higher up. Honestly, he's such a good player. I think he wins it this time. I think he'd be a deserving winner.
Yeah, we did a 100 best players in the world over the summer. I had Rodri top. I had Alisson second. That's just me being myself.
Second. That is so James Benge.
No.
What was Crystal Palace score at the weekend?
Don't. Got Trev Chalobah now. I'm very excited about that.
No, I'm actually not even joking. What was the Palace score at the weekend? They drew at Chelsea, didn't they? Oh, they got a point. They got their first point
on the board.
So yeah, they've got their first point on the board on their way to their Champions League top four spot. They have got 1 point.
Leicester at home on Saturday, so this is where the momentum starts building towards top four.
Oh, I see. Brilliant goal by Eze, actually.
What a player!
See, that's where I'm talking about again. Maybe a gamble. Could Arsenal push the boat out and got Eze in the summer? I think they probably could.
Yeah. Kvara, Leao.
I'm not sure about them, but Eze for me, absolutely. Right, let's move on to some questions now, shall we? Actually, and we will go on to these questions. Just quickly, we haven't spoken about it. What did you make of the red card, Declan Rice red card at the weekend?
It's just so tediously pedantic. I think to an extent,
people dare say letter of the law to me.
Well, but that's the point, is that people talk about the letter of the law, and you just end up thinking like, well, the whole purpose is that the laws are there for the game. Like, the game should. I know, of course, you have to endeavor to obey them, but it's just stupid. It's mind-numbingly dumb, and I think we have to say now. I've seen the PGMOL brief in ESPN about João Pedro. It seems utterly devoid of the idea that players might see the way in which Chris Kavanagh is refereeing incidents like that and respond accordingly. Like, everyone that's even critical of it agrees that Declan Rice, probably shouldn't have done what he did. But if you're not booking João Pedro for booting the ball away and slowing down an Arsenal attack, because there was a Ben White was in 5 meters.
No, it was Thomas Partey. Thomas Partey was running over, and he was going to get the other ball from on top of the cone when João Pedro kicked the ball back into play, so he couldn't do it.
That was the funniest bit of what I read. It was sort of this idea that there's only one football on a pitch, like we're all playing in the 40s again. Like if the ball hadn't been booted back into play, the Arsenal would have got the ball rolling. And then, not that Rice is valid in what he did, but if you can't, that's why we could sort of call for consistency, especially in these things. Stupid, mealy-mouthed, really just spoiled the game. And yeah,
I just can't. I'm stunned to send someone off of that to halfway through a game, totally wreck a game of football, and also then that player has to miss the next game for literally kicking a ball a foot. And getting booted in the process, and the guy who boots him on purpose, who just takes a free hit at kicking him as hard as he possibly can, walks away with absolutely nothing.
Did you see Dermot Gallagher's reaction both to that and then sort of from 2 years ago,
the Henry
Lansbury?
Yeah, I did. Mad. Anyway, so into these questions now, which kind of about that red card. So Weeksy says, with Rice not available against the Spurs, who should we bring in? Should we bring Calafiori into left back to help with the defensive height and strength, especially on set pieces at both ends? Partey, Odegaard and Havertz in midfield, all out attack with pace due to their high line. Martinelli, Sterling and Saka. Power, strength at the back, unbelievable pace up top. North London is red. And you've got Jarvis says, hey, Charles and James, how do you think we should shape up in the NLD? Where do Kai and Sterling play? And Bassi, this was obviously in response to the Odegaard sort of potentially having an injury. He's actually come out now this afternoon, I think. He's had a press conference and he says he's fine. He's got a couple of bangs, but he's fine and he's going to play at the weekend.
Come home, Martin.
I think, yeah, absolutely come home. But he said if Odegaard was to miss the NLD, what do you think the starting midfield three would be with Declan, Marino, Fabianski are all unavailable, gone? So, yeah, in terms of the North London derby, I mean, we're still all quite a way off it yet, but with no Rice, no Marino. Honestly, that Marino injury is so classic Arsenal. What do you think? What your early thoughts on what Mikel should maybe do for the North London derby?
I suppose there isn't much of a choice other than playing Havertz and Odegaard as your central two, because I just would think Jorginho and Partey leaves you a bit vulnerable to the counter, doesn't it? And you know how up down these games.
You can't play that. I don't think you can play that.
So if you're then sort of trapped with that, and let's assume for now, until we're told otherwise, that Gabby Jesus isn't back, I think you then may as well. I would play Trossard through the middle, and Martinelli, Saka wide. And I mean, frankly, I think, like, you know, I know, and I've already envisaged that Sterling will just score the Anthony Martial against Liverpool goal, but that you have to come off the bench for that, don't you? Narratively, it's just richer if he comes off the bench. So I'd be playing it like that. Yeah, it's tough. Then I think you within that system you would need Trossard dropping deeper, because it would be a challenge at Spurs midfield three against Arsenal's. Maybe you're missing the muscularity of Rice. So can it be a bit more of a 4 out of position? Trossard really playing a little bit deeper. And potentially that also gives you the option of, you know, the way that Arteta set up against sort of, it was that period around the West Ham win where you had Trossard and Havertz were almost basically playing as like 2 10s, 2 false 9s. You could just do that as you're being forced into that position. I really like Weeksy suggestion of Calafiori. I hadn't thought of that, but I think it would be a lot easier if he wasn't on international duty. But I think given the strength you're losing elsewhere, having Calafiori, who you would assume would invert as well, having him to just win his duels would help a lot. So yeah, Calafiori at left back, midfield 3, Partey, Odegaard, Havertz, and then Trossard through the middle.
I think that's the exact team that I would do as well. I think, like you, Trossard would be the false 9. And as you said, that when I know there'll be lots of talk about Havertz playing in that midfield role, because there always is when he does play Havertz back in that role. But I think the best he's ever played in that role is that little period where he had Trossard ahead of him in the false 9. We had the Burnley game, the West Ham game, and he was really, really good playing in that role. And they did sort of switch positions. Suddenly Havertz playing as a 9, Trossard would drop a little bit deeper. And I think that's probably the way to go. It'll be interesting if Calafiori does come in. I mean, he's always made a change, hasn't he, after his first international break? In the last couple of seasons, you had the Ramsdale came in and replaced Leno. And then you had Raya come in and replace Ramsdale. Yeah. After that first international break. It'll be interesting if this is the point when he puts Calafiori properly into the mix as the sort of first choice starter at left back. He's looked good every time he's come on, Calafiori. He just stands out, not because he's just ridiculously handsome and those flowing hair of his, but he just stands out on the football pitch. He's just got that character, that personality about him. I think that it makes him stand out from the rest, and it'll be interesting to see if he does play on the left hand side. I mean, Timber's done nothing wrong, I have to say. I don't think Timber's offered much in terms of the attack when he's played that role so far. I think he's done perfectly fine. Defensively, he's done well, but I'm not sure he's offering much at all. I did find myself in that game against Brighton wanting Zinchenko during the game, and that's no slight of Timber at all. I just felt I did want Zinchenko on the pitch at some point during that game.
Yeah, Timber definitely like inverts in a slightly more conservative way, doesn't he? Which I think when you're trying to get like a 2-goal lead against Brighton, for instance, you're like, I wouldn't mind Zinchenko taking a few gambles here. But yeah, I mean, on Calafiori, I think what's really important to say about him, worth hammering this home, it's just a hairstyle that suits the style of play, isn't it? I think if you're going to go bounding out of your left back position and through midfield, you can't be doing that with a buzz cut. You need flowing locks, and those locks, they just fly behind him. It's graceful. It's like having Hercules in your team.
Yeah, absolutely is having Hercules in your team. This is quite a long-winded one from Fraser, but the gist of it is about the next two games. And if Arsenal were to lose these two games, which is entirely possible because they're away at Spurs, away at Manchester City, so it can be very difficult. The fact they're already 2 points behind now going into those two games, and he's starting to feel like, you lose those two games, suddenly it feels like the season could almost be over, which is ridiculous to think at this early stage. But that's what living in the Manchester City era is. I mean, what would if Arsenal were to lose? I mean, obviously we hope that's not the case, but if Arsenal were to lose those two games and City win their games and Liverpool as well, obviously had a fantastic start to the season, what would the gap be? You'd be the 2 points behind now, so you could potentially be 8 points behind already at this stage. Would that be curtains from your point of view? Or I don't think it would be. I think it'd be impossible to say that, but it would
feel like it.
It would already feel like a bit of a mountain to climb, wouldn't it?
Yes, I mean that's exactly, and the feeling within the fan base, within the club, you'd have to work really hard if you're Arteta to stamp that out, to not let it feel like it's already gone. It was so strange after the Brighton game, because I am old enough, and I know you are, to remember when holding on to a 1-1 draw, even at home, against a sort of top 8, top 10 side who play really good football and are in good form, would have felt like you really won a point here, and would almost be not quite pumping fists, but I feel like the 97, 98, even the teams in the early 2000s, that would have been, Arsenal have shown their title mettle. They're not being blown away by, whoever the noughties equivalent of Brighton was. Maybe it's Bolton. But it did. It just felt like you couldn't praise Arsenal for defending well. The sky was falling in, and it isn't, and it won't be. And I'd be surprised if Arsenal get no points against Spurs and City, even with the absentees. It's what I suppose what's doubly strange about this is you have no idea if that 8-point deficit might become a 2-point lead, a 22-point lead, when all the events in the courtrooms kind of reach their conclusion. So I suppose this sounds very anodyne and like the sort of thing Arteta would say at a press conference, and we complain, but all you can do then is head back on, try and win every game, and maybe believe that the City will slip up, because this City team aren't the best City team of all time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was at one stage last season, I think after the West Ham and the Fulham defeats, when Arsenal about 5 points behind, I think they were going into that Liverpool game in February, whatever it was. If they'd have lost, they'd have been 8 points behind then. So there was a 5-point gap with just a few months left of the season, and Arsenal closed that down and went, to the final day. So I don't think 8 points after this small amount of the chunk of the season would be game over, but it would be tough to take. But look, hopefully Arsenal aren't going to get no points for the next two games. They go and win, make it 3 wins in a row at Spurs, and then go and shut up Rodri about playing for a draw at the Etihad and actually get a victory. Big flash of lightning has just gone.
You're getting my one from like an hour ago.
Mad, big flash of lightning. But my kids are absolutely loving this right now. Right, we've got a couple more questions before we wrap this one up. This is a bit of a nostalgia one. I tell you what, first thing first, when I looked at this picture as I was putting it up, I did think to myself, all the talk about, is Fabio Vieira too skinny to play well in the Premier League? And then you look at Mark Overmars there, and he didn't do too badly with it, did he? He didn't mind at all. So yeah, it's not always about the body shape, is it? Charlie says, here's a classic interlull hypothetical: 98 double winners versus the Invincible. Who wins? I actually think 98 just. Defence was impenetrable. Overmars was devastating. 98 was Bergkamp's best season. Oh, this is such. I mean, it's an impossible one to answer, but it would be a hell of a game. Who do I think was the better team? I tell you what, there's a fair argument. Well, I don't think it's a fair argument. I think it's almost undeniable, even though they won nothing, that the 99 team was better than the 98 team, because you had Anelka in his absolute searing best for Arsenal. In 98, he was finding his way. Right, he was injured for half the season. So Anelka came in, scored, he was brilliant, scored a few goals, some important ones as well. But in the following year, Anelka was stunningly good. The following year, you still had Bergkamp, Overmars, Petit, Vieira, the same defence, Seaman. It was an amazing. They were the best team in the league that year. Yeah. But it still winds me up so much that Arsenal won nothing that season and Man United won it all. And so, yeah.
Same in 2003 as well. The 2003 team is far better. Well, it's better than the Invincibles for sure. I think the sort of Invincibles is the very end of Imperial Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
To answer the question, I just about it's the Invincible. I mean, I think the answer is that the double winners of 02 is the best. I would inch towards. No, I'll give it to the Invincibles. They got Thierry.
I would give it to the Invincibles. I think the Invincibles would just get it. I think because you had Henry, you had Vieira. 2004 Vieira was better than 98 Vieira, although 98 Vieira was still brilliant. You had Gilberto, who was fantastic. You had Ashley Cole, best defender in the world at that point at left back. Lauren was immense. You had Campbell, was brilliant. So I mean, it would be close, but I would give it to the Invincibles. I have to say.
No love for Manu Petit ever. I was just when this question came up, I sort of thought, because he sort of gives quite negative quotes nowadays when he talks about Arsenal, and it's his opinion, he's entitled to it. It sort of feels like, and obviously he left quite early on, it feels like Manu Petit never quite gets the appreciation among the fan base that I personally, as someone that grew up, and he was very much a star of that first great Arsenal team, and especially the run at the back end of the season. I remember him playing some teams off the park.
He was brilliant. Him and Vieira, that partnership was unbelievable. But yeah, he went at Chelsea, so no.
Yeah, only himself to blame.
Yeah. Right, couple more here, and this is about Zinedine Zidane-esque starlet Max Dowman. No pressure there, Nostradamus, early on for a 14-year-old. But he's talking about Dowman, how well he's doing. Only 14, made his under-18s debut at the age of 13. Thoughts on getting a new affiliated team of a higher level to loan out academy players to? We've spoken about that in the past, have we? Neither of us really agree on the fact that we want Arsenal to get into the multi-club sort of umbrella. But sort of following on from that about Dowman, AFC, it's just Matt, says Ethan Nwaneri shining for England under 19s, as well as Lewis Skelly, who is a captain now, apparently. Just shows another leader brewing in our future midfield. Max Dowman also scored for England under 17s. I think it's crazy. He's only 14 and playing so many years above him. He's definitely one to watch, like Ethan and Miles. What are your thoughts on those mentioned? I mean, look, Max, there's so much excitement about how good Max Dowman could be. No doubt about it. He's a phenomenal talent. To be doing what he's doing at his age shows that. But he's still so young. It's like everyone at Arsenal will be doing their utmost to try and protect him at the moment and over the next few years. It's very hard to protect him completely when he's doing what he's doing at such a young age. He's always going to get people looking at him. But yeah, he's a hell of a talent.
Yeah, for every Ethan Nwaneri, there's half a dozen Miguel Azizes. I don't know if you saw, he is now in Greece, I want to say. He left Ibiza after only 6 months. I think his contract was only for 6 months. So it's just a reminder to cool the pressure on these lads, because an awful lot of them will not live up to Arsenal fans' hopes and prayers, and that's natural. Arsenal have just had a window where they've sold about £100 million worth of academy or young English talent. So they're doing quite well. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. And then finally, I've had loads of questions on Osimhen. One from Finsbury Phil here says, with the much lower release clause now in place and a more realistic attitude to wages, do you see us now trying to pre-agree something with Osimhen in January? He's obviously gone to Galatasaray. You can see better signing his contract in at the picture. Do I see us pre-agreeing? No, I don't. Obviously Osimhen's name comes up more than I think any other player on this channel in terms of questions and comments, but I've just never, not since when I know that there was interest the year that Gabriel Jesus signed, and I know there was talks, but they never materialized into anything. I've never heard since then that they are really sort of pushing for him or have been pushing for him. So, he was available this summer. Obviously, he's a little bit cheaper now. The agreement that's been struck, his release clause has been slashed massively, so he might be a little bit more attainable, but I still feel like he's going to end up at Chelsea. I don't know about you. He still has Chelsea written all over him to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, his idols, Didier Drogba, all the little things sort of point to Chelsea. I think he would be great at Arsenal, and I don't suspect he would discount Arsenal. I'd be fascinated what would happen if, say Arsenal are where we expect them to be in the table in January and Chelsea are maybe where we fear they might, or if we're Chelsea fans, we fear they might be. What choice would Osimhen make then? At the right price, I think he'd be fantastic. But
well, the new release clause is something about, isn't it down to like 70 or something like that, 65, 70 million, something like that. And I think he's got a break clause in, or it's been reported, and I don't know this for fact, so I'm just taking it from what I've seen, but he's got a reported break clause in January for his loan. There's about sort of 8 clubs or something that if they came in for him, he could break his loan with Gala, and I think Arsenal's one of them, as well as Chelsea and Liverpool and maybe PSG, some other teams. So, yeah, I mean, it's impossible to rule it out, but yeah, I have no idea.
The break clause is true. The issue is he earns €320,000 a week. I don't know how that's being split. Obviously, it's quite a bit easier for Turkish clubs to pay big money due to their income tax system, but that would always be the problem. If Osimhen would like to come and play for Arsenal on half those wages, on 160, 180 grand, I think that would be a fantastic deal. I think as your top earner, even though I think he'd be the starting number 9, I just don't think it quite adds up for me.
No. Well, we'll find out in January or the summer. Thankfully, we've got a few months where transfers aren't going to be at the very top of the agenda. We can all enjoy a little bit of football and talk about football rather than...
There's no football happening, though.
Well, it starts today. Thomas Partey's kicking off now, I think, or in half an hour's time. So the first Arsenal player of the international break hopefully comes back unscathed for once from an international break, because if anything happened to him ahead of that Spurs game, then the midfield would look very, very light at all. But we are going to have some football to talk about anyway over the next few days. Right, we'll be back next week, me and you. We'll do another one of these in probably end of the week. We'll really sort of look ahead to that Spurs game, I imagine. And then, yeah, have a good weekend. Anything planned?
No, enjoying a free weekend for once. What about yourself?
My daughter's birthday this weekend, so I'm got the joys of a 10-year-old's birthday party at the trampoline park with 14 screaming girls and boys to look forward to on a Saturday.
What, Wacky Warehouse are we talking? Or
no, it's Rush in High Wycombe.
No, bring back Wacky Warehouse. Panda Pop.
Yeah,
will they get Panda Pop?
Instead of sitting at a football ground on Saturday, I'm going to be at trampoline park instead, enjoying that. How is my daughter 10 years old? How is my daughter 10 years old? Terrifying. How has that happened? She started year 5 today at school, first day back. It's just like, my God, honestly, blink and you miss it. All those cliches, but they're true. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching and taking part. As always, we both really do appreciate it. I'll be back tomorrow with one of my usual shows. You want anything you want me to discuss in that, you know what to do. Get into the comments. I'll pull some of them together and get them included. Until then, have a good one, mate. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.